Let us not whisper it, let us say it loudly, and let it shake the rafters. 150 little girls went to school and did not come home. 150 futures folded into dust and concrete and smoke. And we can debate doctrine until our mouths are dry. We can cite treaties and precedents and doctrines of imminence. We can argue about centrifuges and missile ranges and proxy networks, but none of those words will tuck a child into bed tonight. None of them will quiet a mother's scream when the call comes that the building's gone. So don't sanitize it. A school was struck. Desks were splintered, backpacks were buried, the air was filled with dust and fire, and somewhere tonight there are fathers staring at small shoes that'll never be worn again. If that doesn't pierce the soul of you, then what exactly are we defending? Yes, the Iranian regime was authoritarian. Yes, dissent was crushed. Yes, many Iranians long for something freer, but unpopularity is not a license to execute. Tyranny does not suspend sovereignty at the whim of another state. If it did, then every powerful nation will reserve for itself the right to eliminate leaders it dislikes. That's not order. That is precedent for permanent war. And here's the dangerous logic that hums beneath that. There was a threat, but there's always a threat. In the modern age, threat is elastic. It stretches to fit whatever fear we need it to justify. Missiles and bunkers, uranium and centrifuges, militias and borderlands, cyber code and shadow networks. If that qualifies as imminent, then imminence has lost its meaning. If hostility is enough, then every adversary is a future battlefield. And if every adversary is a battlefield, then peace is just an illusion that we pretend to value. We are told this is strength. We are told this is deterrence. We are told that this is necessary. But strength without restraint is not strength. It is just impulse dressed in a uniform. Deterrence that escalates into open conflict is not peace through strength. It is war through momentum. And let us be honest with ourselves about momentum, because once the machinery of war begins to turn, it doesn't hum softly, it roars, it consumes, it demands replenishment contracts and supplemental budgets and deployments for the foreseeable future. It creates constituencies who benefit from its continuation. This is not conspiracy. This is political economy, and it is the history of the United States. We have attacked a sovereign nation. We have killed its supreme leader. We have struck inside its territory. We have seen a school reduced to rubble and little bodies pulled from concrete. And we have heard language about foreseeable conflict. Foreseeable conflict. That phrase should chill anyone who remembers how these stories unfold. We destabilize, we degrade infrastructure, we decapitate leadership, we speak of liberation, and then the vacuum comes, where militias rise and hardliners consolidate. Regional powers meddle, and the moderates we claim to defend disappear between rubble and revenge. And when the dust settles, we ask why the next authoritarian has emerged from the wreckage we created. Institutional memory matters. Iraq taught us that removing a regime without preserving the skeleton of the state invites chaos. Libya taught us that air power is not a governance plan. Afghanistan taught us that 20 years of war cannot manufacture legitimacy where political settlement never existed. So the questions must be asked, and they must be asked loudly, clearly, and repeatedly. What is the political end state? Not the military objective, the political end state. What replaces what we've just shattered? Who governs? Who secures the borders? Who protects civilians tomorrow? Where is Congress in this? What authorization governs this conflict? What metrics determine success? What prevents this from metastasizing across the region? What is the stabilization architecture? What's the timeline? And yes, who profits? History shows us that defense contractors expand when wars do. That's not conspiracy. It is ledger books and budget supplements. Once the machinery of war turns, it generates those contracts. Momentum without defined off-ramps becomes inertia. This is not about hating an administration. It is not about partisan fury. It is about whether the decisions being made demonstrate deep institutional knowledge and long-term vision for the citizens of the United States. Leadership is not a game show. It is not branding. It is not spectacle. It is stewardship of the consequences. And when the president acts from a resort instead of the situation room, perhaps the geography doesn't matter technically, but symbolically it speaks to something people feel. A sense that the gravity has been replaced by improvisation, a sense that the weight of history is being handled lightly. Maybe there are rooms full of serious planners modeling contingencies. If so, show us. Democracy demands visibility. Anger here is not the enemy, though. Apathy is. There are moments when raised voices are not destabilizing, they are necessary. Citizens have every right to shout these questions at power, not to burn down the republic, not to abandon law, but to insist that war be justified, authorized, limited, and planned beyond the next news cycle. We can support security without surrendering scrutiny. We can reject authoritarianism abroad without normalizing assassination as policy. We can insist that America act with strength without confusing strength for perpetual escalation. And above all, we can remember that children do not belong in our doctrinal debates. If those answers exist, show them to us. Democracy is not strengthened by secrecy in matters of war. It is strengthened by debate, authorization, and defined limits. And do not tell the American people that we are too small to question this. Do not tell us that anger is unpatriotic. There is a long and sacred tradition in this country of citizens raising their voice when war is entered into without clarity. Anger, when disciplined, is not chaos. It is a moral force. It is the same force that once demanded civil rights, the same force that once demanded accountability after corruption, the same force that once filled the streets when wars dragged on without end. If we are wrong, show us why with evidence. This action reduces long-term risk. Prove it with transparent strategy. If this prevents catastrophe, articulate how. But do not ask us to accept dead children and open-ended conflict as the price of your brand. 150 girls. I'll say it again. 150 girls. They will not grow up to debate geopolitics. They won't vote. They will not dissent. They will not reform their country from within. They will not build bridges between nations because they are gone. And if we cannot let that fact bend our own rhetoric toward humility and gravity, then we are drifting somewhere dangerous. We deserve leadership that understands history, leadership that respects law, leadership that weighs long-term consequences over short-term theater, leadership that knows war is not branding and foreign policy is not performance. We deserve better than improvisation in a region that is already soaked in blood. So, here's the hammer. Strength is not the volume of your strike. It is the wisdom of your restraint. And peace is not the silence after a missile hits. It is the stability that follows years later. If there is no plan for that stability, then this is not a strategy. It is escalation. And the American people have every right to demand that war be more than reaction, more than optics, more than momentum. Because if we do not demand wisdom right now, we will inherit the consequences later. And history will not care how confident our leaders sounded. It will remember the rubble. It will remember the vacuum. And it will remember the children. Defiant still death.